Welcome back to Outbuilding. This is going to be an exciting episode. I just received a new stump grinder for the tractor, and this is an articulating stump grinder from Baumalight. I had originally talked to Baumalight about doing some video for them for one of their trenchers, and it turns out the hydraulic flow on my tractor isn't high enough and that wasn't going to work. But in our discussion, I also mentioned that I need to do some stumps as I remove out trees, and they said, why don't you try one of these stump grinders? And so I'm going to do some video for them, and they sent me out this thing to use, and so I'm excited to get started with this. Before I get started, it seems like everything I get has hydraulic couplers that aren't quite consistent with mine, so I went ahead and went to my hydraulic supplier and got some new fittings, and I'm just going to put those on. That's why I poked some holes in the packaging here. I'll put those on while I'm here, and I've got my tools handy, and then tomorrow we're going to head out to the coast and start cutting down some trees that are in the way. We have to clear those out for fire, and we'll use the stump grinder to take those out. Some of them I could probably dig out with the backhoe, but it'd be pretty invasive if I did, and some of them are just too big to do that. So anyway, I'm excited to use this. I'll get these fittings on, and we'll head out to the coast, and we'll start looking at grinding some stumps. All right, well, it made it over without incident to the coast here, and I was able to fork it off. It's kind of, my tractor has about 1,200 lift capacity, and this is about 1,000 pounds, so it's getting close to the limit for that, but it was enough to get it off. It's strange, the weight is very centered high because the whole gearbox and the wheel and everything is up here, and I think they position it that way so that they can have it upright and it's easier to palletize and move around in quantity. I am going to need to set it down, and so I'll use the forks from the tractor to probably set it down. And then I think when I had the hydraulic lines off, I bled a little bit of fluid out, and it may have leaked down the cylinders a little bit because I think it's starting to kind of wanting to flop over a little. So I may actually get the tractor over here and kind of just put the forks up next to it so that I don't have it tip over on me once I open up the crating. But I'll look in here first and just cut the windows open and look and see what we've got to work with. I will say it's really nice packaging, just the quality of the crating and stuff. So I'm sure it's in good shape in here. It'd be fun to finally see it. It's easier to see on this side where that hanging hook is. So this is the hanging hook here that I can use to lift it with. It's a lift point. So I think it probably will be easiest for me to get the tractor over here and get something hanging on, because it's blowing out this side here. So I think I've got just enough height with the bottom of the frame for the forks here to be able to crane from the top. So I'm going to pull the forks off and just use the frame to do this and some chain. All right, well, I'm thinking this through just to make sure it's gonna work. I've got a ton of weight on the back. I've got 600-700 pounds on the back and the weighted wheels, so that should be pretty good to balance it. It's gonna tip over, and the only thing I'm worried about is having it spin, the crate spin. So if it starts spinning a little bit, I'll stop. But otherwise, I'm just gonna back up and try to rock it back. And as I take up the weight, then I can lower it down with the crane. And there's a big lid on here. This lid here, it's gonna flop, but it's gonna flop up and hit that crate when it gets down far enough. So I think I'm in good shape. So we'll see how this goes. Well, I'm holding it now, but I think I'm hung up on the grill guard, so I need to bend my grill guard a little bit. I'm holding the unit up with the tractor now, which is fine, but I need to get the grill guard or the piece of wood out of the way, so I'll cut that out. So I was able to lift it a little bit and get it up over. I think I can inch out and get the grill guard out from underneath the piece of wood. I'm gonna see. There we go. Actually, the grill guard bent back, so I got away with that one. All right, do a little bit of a walk around here. So it's got, you can see they've got the lower links coming to the inside, which means it's a wider cage, and that way the PTO shaft can articulate back and forth a little bit more cleanly. And just looking at it, I'll probably move these down to the lower peg just because my arms sit pretty low as I'm looking at it on my tractor. Anyway, so you got your 3-point spots here, one up here, and then you got two hydraulics, one ram. This ram here is going to lift the whole thing up and down, and so that's going to be, you'll use that to adjust the height as you're moving it through. And then there's one that's got a sweep here that helps it sweep back and forth, and that's the one you're going to use to cut. And the one that's got a sweep has you can see it's got a flow restrictor on the valve, or on the hydraulic loop, so that you're not like shaking your tractor all over the place trying to move it. So that's the sort of articulation of it, and it's got really nice hard points. So it's all looks like 1/4-inch steel, if not more. Really well put together. This is a little thicker here, the hanging point. And then it's got this giant beefy gearbox, and that's where your PTO shaft comes in, ties to that. It's got a slip clutch, which is really nice. So if I do kind of jam it, I'm not gonna break something. It's gonna slip. And so the clutch is in there, PTO shaft goes out. And then there's this giant hood that I can flop over, and it sits down on the ground and keeps the chips, because it's going to send chips all over the place, so that sits out there. And then if you look in here, there's individually bolted on teeth, and there's a bunch of teeth. This one has a big plate, feels like it's about 1 inch thick, that is the rotating rotor, so it's got some mass to it to cut into things. And then it's got these carbide tip teeth in there, and they suggest that you cut really carefully at first, just to kind of slightly dull the teeth, because they chip a little bit easier when they're completely sharp. Anyway, it's got a bunch of individual teeth both on the ends and on this inside, and so you'll sweep across, lift up, and sweep across. You're always cutting with this face, and the other face is closed off. And it's pretty clever that somewhere on here, I saw in the packaging, up here, they even include a little box of 6 extra teeth. So you've got some replacement teeth, you've got instructions, and I thought it was just a lot of attention to detail. Like they've in the instructions, this is pretty common to have instructions on here, but I thought it was pretty thoughtful. As I show you here, they include in the instructions a set of safety glasses, which is a good idea when you're using this thing. Anyway, I'll go ahead and sort of get the tractor spun around and try to get this thing hooked up and see if I can't get the adjustment points on there so that I've got it sitting right, and we'll give it a spin. So we're going to remove some trees, and we're going to use the stump grinder to remove the stumps. And the ones to the right of the cabin over here, big tall cedars, those are close to 100, 120 feet tall. A couple issues with those. I would call those varsity trees in terms of removal, because we're going to need to be pretty skilled with felling trees. So we'll probably have somebody professionally fell those. And they're also kind of leaning out over the cabin. And although we're going to remove that cabin, we don't want to remove it that way. So those are going to be the last ones we do. And we may even do those after we've demoed the cabin. There's a couple of the alder, which is the leafed tree here, one of which is really sick and is kind of almost completely cored out. And so we're going to remove both of those. Behind it is a spectacular Sitka spruce that we're going to keep, and it's got a nice big trunk, so we'll keep that one. And then I've got a little alder in front here, which is kind of like my freshman tree. So I'm going to use that one to start with today, and then I've got a Doug fir next to it. We're going to keep the Doug fir and the big Sitka. The rest of these are going to come out, and that'll kind of create this grassy knoll that we'll put the cabin on eventually. So today we're just going to take out this little alder here in front, and it's got a concrete ring around it. I don't know if it was planted in the ring or if it just was a volunteer inside of a little planter, but I'm going to cut it down first. You can see it here. I'm going to cut it down first and then flip the ring off with my forklift, and then I'll bring the stump grinder in and grind down that stump. And that's about an 8-inch stump, so that'll be a good one to start with. It's interesting, you can see how the elk have come and they just trash the trees because I think they rub their antlers on it and it feels good. If you look over here, you can see the large stump there. That's the Sitka that's in really good shape, so we're going to keep it. And then there's a small kind of messy tree next to it that we're going to take out. That one's kind of right near our drainage field or our septic field, and so we want to remove that one. So that's probably the second one we'll take out. And then these two alders, you can see the one on this side is actually in pretty good shape, and it's super healthy, and it's 18 inches around. It's a pretty good sized tree. The one on this side, if you look carefully, is almost got no integrity. It's completely rotted out in the middle. It's amazing that it's still growing. So that'll be probably the next one that we take out, and then we'll eventually take both of these out. So since I'm sort of new to felling trees and I want to get good at it, I'm going to set a little target out and see how close I can get to dropping the tree on it. This is a super easy tree, and there's plenty of space to work with and stuff, but it'll be nice to learn to put them where I want them to go. So I'm going to put this out as a target, and we'll see how close I can get to it. Well, I don't know if it's beginner's luck, but that was pretty darn close. So that you can see the stick down in there, and I'm, I don't know, a foot off, so pretty close. And that'll be nice if I can get to better at dropping those where I want them to go. It'll make things a lot easier. So now I just got to limb this up, and we'll save some of this alder because you can actually mill it, and I might use it for some of the interior of the new cabin, but for now I'll just get it drying and set it aside, and then we'll chip up the rest of the smaller stuff. So with the tree chipped up and tucked away, and what will probably be a fire ring for us pulled off the thing, whatever that planter thing was, I was able to get the stump grinder over and get started giving it a try. This is a perfectly flat spot to work and a good place to get started. So I started off by taking pretty small swipes across. It didn't bog down the motor at all, so I think I could take a much larger bite, but I was just trying to get a feel for the controls. And the nice thing is you can drop, you're digging down, essentially once you get down to the grade level, you can go down another 6 inches or so, depending on how you've got your 3-point hitch set up. And you've got a lot of clearance, so I was able to dig down and really kind of eliminate it down below. So when I'm done, all I have to do is sort of rake over the grass. You can see I'm sort of almost digging in the dirt now. And I'm still moving really slow just as I'm getting used to it. But again, this is a really favorable tree to start, get a feel for it. And I think I needed to move either forward or backwards when I was done with this to finish up the stump, just to get it positioned in the right place, which is part of what you learn with where the reach is. So with the stump ground up, I just kind of tossed around the chips and the dirt that was left, a couple clods and everything, and then I'll throw some seed on that, and that should grow back in really quickly. It's pretty amazing how quickly that went compared to using a hand shovel or digging it up with a backhoe and making a giant hole. So it's a nice first try. Moving on to the next tree now. So this next tree is a little bit more challenging. This is an old cedar that was growing right in the middle of our drainage or septic field. And so there's no way I could really dig this out without ripping up the septic field. So when the people came to inspect the septic system, they said you ought to cut those down and just leave the stump there. But I can grind this down now. Now that with the stump grinder, I can grind it down. And you can see this is on sort of a set of terraces on a fairly steep slope. So I'm going to have to kind of work my way around with the tractor and figure out a way to get in there to do it. But this is a case where there's probably no other way to remove this without using a stump grinder. And so I'm first just starting by cutting down the stubs of the trees so that I can get to it with the stump grinder. So it was pretty tricky to get into this spot, but once I got there, I was able to plant the back of the 3-point hitch in the frame from the stump grinder and get a good solid base. And this was a pretty dried out stump because we'd cut it down about a year ago. And so I had a nice place to work from. I was able to get off the tractor and manage it from the side and just worked my way back and forth across it. This one went by pretty quick, and I was able to dig down, like I said, to get below subsurface, but not get into the septic system at all and get this thing cleared out. It worked pretty well. When done, I just did a little bit of work with the rake to kick around the dirt and the chips again, and you would never even really know the stump was there. This one, again, will grow in really quickly. All right, well, we got our first 2 stumps done, and now I'm going to move on to some slightly bigger trees. So we've got this really nice giant tree here that we're going to save. And to the right of it over here is a small tree that it's not super healthy. It's growing into the septic field a little bit, and it's kind of tangling in with this, and we need to keep our canopies separate. So this tree is going to come out, and just looking at it, it looks really like it's going to be pretty clear of tangling with anything else as it goes down. It's leaning the way we want to send it. And so it should be a pretty easy one for me to do as I kind of get better at working with trees. So I'll take this one down, and then we'll get the stump grinder out. We already ground a stump below, and we'll grind down the stump for that one. And then we'll move on to some of these other bigger ones that are a little bit more involved because they kind of are tied into each other. We'll have to pick which ones to take out first. Got my target again, so I'll put it out and see how close I can get. All right, well, that wasn't perfect. I'm definitely learning, and I think there's a couple issues I had. I had a decent wedge, but it didn't have as straight across. It was sort of, you can see it's kind of a pie shaped, and I'll pull the wedge out once we get it cleared out. Might be able to find it here and show you. The wedge I cut out has sort of a funny shape to it because my saw wasn't long enough to get all the way through the tree, and so I should have cleaned up this center a little bit more and made myself a better hinge. wasn't terrible. And then there's some punkiness in this tree that I wouldn't have expected. That there's some other stuff. Anyway, this tree wasn't in great shape. It's good to learn, and it's good to learn on JV trees. So let's walk around and see how I did on my targeting. I think because that wedge was shaped a little funny, it may not be as good as I'd hoped, but it's not terrible. You can see the target board over here, and looking at the slope, it's a little bit off to the side. It's a really strange tree, and there's a really long branch on the upper tree that I'm glad it didn't tangle with, and I was trying to get it to drop out clear of that, which it did, which I'm glad for. So now we're gonna switch to time lapse and buck this up, and we will chip most of it, and then the rest of it we can save for firewood and or firewood ring seats. So we were tired from bucking up the trees, so the next morning we got back to it and first tried to get the stumps out of the way and the stalks of the tree. We're going to use these as seats around a fire ring, and they also are pretty heavy, so I was able to throw them in the bucket and act as sort of ballast. This is a tougher spot to get to again. We're sort of in between two terraces, and you can see the stump is quite a high up on the left-hand side there. So I needed to kind of, again, sort of back up into it and sort of crab my way around, having done it before. And I did it, and it worked okay, but it was tougher to find a really solid place to plant the base of the three-point harness or the frame of the stump grinder, so that made it a little bit more challenging, you'll see here. So once I got into position, I was able to start grinding this one. It's green because I just cut it down. It's about 18 inches across, and I have a really funny angle. So I'm starting by just kind of nibbling off the front side of it, and then I'm able to kind of, you'll see in successive passes, I'll inch up my way up the hill a little bit, and I have to kind of shovel the dirt around a little bit to get a spot to plant the footing. But I'm able to get it grinding here, and this is in slow motion, but you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like when you're grinding it. Here you can better see how it was sort of shaking the tractor a little bit, and that's mostly just because I didn't have that back base on really good firm ground. But I was able to get in there. Now I'm getting into the dirt and starting to sort of get below grade and really getting after the what remains of the stump. And I was able to get it down probably close to a foot below grade just because of the way I was positioned with the tractor. So that was a harder one to get to. There's a big slope and it's kind of staircased here. So I had to kind of crab the tractor around and get it up in here. And then I found that there's a sort of a footing that the 3-point corner in back, the frame of the stump grinder sits in, and that thing was sitting pretty low. So I had to kind of shovel around and kind of kick around some dirt here. But I was able to kind of inch my way in and inch my way back and get that thing way down so that even if we knock down this hill a little bit and kind of clean it up, it'll be gone. And it's crazy because that was quite a bit of wood. It just gets chipped into the dirt and you can't even really see it. So we've chipped a couple of them here now, and there's a little bit of chippings, but it's really non-invasive in the sense that once you get done, you can kind of rake it out and it's going to grow grass really quick. So this is a tough one to get to. It's probably about the boundaries of what I would do with the tractor, both in terms of the slope, and also it rattles around quite a bit because you need a good footing for it. But it's the third one I've done, and I'm getting a feel for it. You can definitely walk that thing back and forth as slowly as you need to get it going. I needed to check. It seems like it's vibrating a little bit, and that just may be that the tractor is fairly lightweight, and there's a whole lot of mass out on this giant moment arm, but it's working really well. So the next thing I'm going to do is build a little pallet for it so that I can move it around with the pallet forks when I'm not using it and just moving, shuttling my implements around. I'll do that and probably put it away for this trip out because we're going to do some chipping now that we've got all this slash from the tree. But it's been really great, and I'll wrap up with a little bit of discussion about what I think about the stump grinder. Well, this is kind of fun. I've made it to 500 subscribers, which is not a lot of subscribers. I'm not in this to try to make a ton of money off of YouTube, but I do welcome equipment that I can try and that's useful on the place, and I can do the best I can to give an honest review of that. And this is the first of those. So Baumalight sent me this, just to be clear. Most of the everything else you've seen I purchased, but this was something that they sent for me in exchange for some video work, and I will do an evaluation of this thing. You'll see it. You saw it in this video. I will do other videos, and you'll see more of it in time to come, and maybe in some of their promotional videos as well. So I'm going to go over a few things that I think are kind of impressive just looking at the design of this thing. As I said, the steel is really super solid. Giant gearbox. This back shroud can flip up. I think you saw that if I need to crowd in right close to say a building or a fence line or something, this thing gets up and out of the way to work with that. They've wrapped the hoses, which is nice. They've got the flow restrictor already put on the hoses when you get it. Grease zerks on everything. Instructions here, which is pretty typical. The PTO shaft, I like that it's a slip clutch, and so you've got, you know, a big torque mass out there, and so if you shock that on the end of this long PTO shaft, the slip clutch is going to go, not instead of breaking something like a shear bolt. And super nice frame. It's got kind of a wide frame so that it can articulate, and they've got sort of accommodations for both like a class 1 and a class 2 hitch back here. So they've got different mount points. It's pretty spread just because they're trying to allow room for that articulation. And like I said, on the back side here, they've got 6 packs of blades just bolted right on there with it. And it's clearly labeled. And then the rotor itself, this is a one-sided cutting head, so that this is the cutting side on this side, so it would cut towards where you're looking. And it's got teeth on the ends so that you can drop it into things and then come across. And I found that to be pretty effective. You bring it across, sweep it back, drop it down a little bit, bring it across again, and keep going. And I'm just learning to use it. You know, I've done 3 stumps now, so I'm sure I'll get better at it over time. So I first learned about Baumalight when I was looking at flails, and they make 2 classes of flails. They have one that's hydraulically powered that would sit on the front of like a skid steer, and it is bomber. I mean, it's going. The videos I've seen of people using it, it's going through just giant stuff. And then they also have one that's PTO powered that sits right on the 3-point hitch, and you kind of back into things with the tractor. And because I've got such long terrain and everything, I didn't feel like either of those was going to work ideally for me, especially with my small tractor. But that turned me on to how, you know, these high quality products that they make. And so then when I was looking for a trencher, I found they also make a trencher. And unfortunately, it's got a lot of hydraulic power needs that my tractor won't be able to do. But in doing so, and in contacting them and talking to them a little bit about the video work that I've been doing, we talked about it and said, well, why don't we work with a stump grinder? So they sent me a stump grinder, and it is PTO powered, which I've got, you know, just enough horsepower to be able to run this thing. It's probably right on the low edge of that, but it certainly is working well. And then I've got rear remotes, which makes me able to articulate it and sweep it around. So it works well. They do make a kit. If you don't have rear remotes, they make a kit that sort of extends a hydraulic loop to be able to run it from there. I found it pretty convenient to both be on the tractor and run it with my remotes from up there if I'm positioned well, or because I was on some rough terrain in some of those, and I'm also just learning this, I was able to get off the tractor because my tractor will run if the emergency brake is on with me off and the PTO running, and so I jump off and I can sort of watch it and get a little bit better control over it. So it works well in either case, but there's a way to do it if you don't have rear remotes with an extended package there. So Baumalight has a ton of different, I think if you were to say what they mostly do, it's hydraulically powered implement stuff. So they have, you know, for a skid steer or an excavator or something that's essentially a giant hydraulic pump with actuators and wheels hooked onto it. They make all kinds of stuff that works with that, both for the tractor and for articulation. When you've got a tractor, what you really have is a drivetrain with a small hydraulic pump hooked onto it. And so the tractor is using the transmission to do most of the work, and the small hydraulic pump for articulation. So this stump grinder fits into that category really well. So that's why we're using this here. And I will do the trenching probably just by hand with a specific trencher, because I've got some really challenging terrain that's almost easier for me to walk through than to try to get a space for a tractor to get through for that. So they make different classes of this stump grinder. This one is articulating on a boom. They make a smaller one that sits kind of like their flail on the back of a 3-point hitch, where you use the tractor to kind of go back and forth across it. However, I think for the kinds of places I'm doing and being able to reach, you saw even in these, I've been reaching down and up to get to things. There's places today I could not have gotten the tractor to do the stump grinding. So that having this articulation, and because I have rear remotes, that's a better fit. This thing works really, really well, and I'll learn to use it more as I'd show you in future videos. I just got started. You saw, you know, learning how to crab it around and get on places. It's really critical with a smaller tractor like I've got to get that back base really planted and on the ground. Then it tends to settle down and it grinds, and you can really feather it so you don't have to go super fast. This thing's made in North America. This comes from Canada. So Baumalight has a dealership network, and if you get on their website, you can put in your zip code and it'll show you their dealers. That didn't show every dealer possible. So my dealer, which is Brim Tractor here in the Northwest, is a different one, and it was not listed there, but they do have a full line of Baumalight stuff and they can get it in. So I really appreciate Brim bringing it in. And there is a huge helicopter coming over the top, so I'm going to stop talking and we'll let it go by. All right, I'm not sure who that was. It looked like 2 perhaps military helicopters doing a training exercise. Anyway, I think I was saying that they have a dealer network, and you can get this through dealers both that are listed in their network, but also like my dealer Brim Tractor in the Northwest here was great about letting this land on their dock and get it to me. I've done a lot of work with them and hope to keep doing that, and I really appreciate Bob and Steve and everybody down there letting me drop this thing there so that I could pick it up and get it loaded onto my trailer. I appreciate you watching. I'll be doing many more of this with with the flail. We've got our water supply coming down, and I will trench that, not using Baumalight stuff because I don't have the right tractor for it. I'll be using a smaller hand trencher that I can rent, and a bunch of other projects around here as we get ready to tear down the cabin and rebuild a new one. So if you want to see any of that stuff, please subscribe. And until I see you next, I'll be out building. Thanks for watching.